Welcome, ghouls, to Season 2, Episode 11 of the Shrouded in Darkness podcast, where we shine a light on the cases that the world forgot. I'm your true crime-obsessed host, Marlena. Today's case takes us to Austin, Texas, a case that changes the lives of 4 innocent victims, their families, and the community. Before we dive in, let's look at our sources. Yahoo News, the Austin Police website, KSAT News, A&E, and the Morbid Podcast. It's December 6th, 1991. It's like any other day. We see Jennifer Harbison, 17 years old, and her sister Sarah, 15 years old. Jennifer has her shift at the I Can't Believe It's yogurt shop, and she agrees to take Sarah and Sarah's friend, Amy Ayers, who is 13 at the time, to the local mall. The mall is only a block or two away from where Jennifer works, so it works perfectly. She drops the girls off and goes straight to her job. Along with Jennifer, Eliza Thomas, also 17, will be working the closing shift at the yogurt shop. The two had grown accustomed to their routine, having done it many times before. At 9 p.m., when the mall is closing, Jennifer goes to pick up Sarah and Amy, and then she returns all of them back to her work. And the girls patiently wait there with them, and they order a pizza, and they just enjoy the evening. The 4 of them had actually been friends for quite some time. They were all part of the Future Farmers of America organization. They shared a love of animals and the outdoors. These were your typical school-aged kids. Eliza and Jennifer were juggling work and school. Jennifer was responsible. Eliza was a stickler for the rules, so it made sense for them to be closing up the yogurt shop together. Jennifer was also known to bring joy to those that knew her. She and her sister were considered tomboys, and Sarah was also known to be assertive, a natural-born leader. Amy, the youngest of the group, was said to be an old soul. She was also called a cowgirl. At 10:42 p.m., Eliza rings up the final sale of the night. Again, this is December 6th, 1991, so it's a Friday. The last sale of the night, that goes to Tim Stryker and his girlfriend, Margaret Sheen. The co-workers start the process of closing, while Sarah and Amy patiently wait. It's just before midnight, 11:47 according to research, when a patrol officer is in the area and notices smoke rising from that same building. He quickly reports it to the fire department, and when the firefighters arrive on scene, they're expecting to just have to extinguish some flames, but they are horrified to find 4 lifeless bodies, all in the back of that yogurt shop, nude, bound, gagged, and shot dead. Later on, autopsies are conducted, and the victims are officially identified by dental records. Eliza, Jennifer, and Sarah were each killed by one close-range shot to the back of the head by a .22 caliber pistol. Jennifer and Amy both showed ligature marks around their necks. Amy was the only one that had been shot twice and with a second gun. It was a .380. She was also in a different room from the other girls. It's believed that maybe the first shot didn't kill her and maybe she tried to get away. Lastly, it's believed that at least 2 of the girls were sexually assaulted. Here are a few key pieces we take away from the scene. There is very little evidence due to the fire and the quick responding sprinkler system. So much water damage in that room, in that building. Although the key was hanging from the inside of the front door, it was locked, which was a clear indication that, the girls were in the closing process of the night. So it was locked. The firemen had to actually force their way in to get to where the fire was. This actually could suggest that the perpetrator entered from the back of the building, since the door was locked. Also, the cash register was empty, which could indicate that the motive was robbery. Based on the information they have, police think that the assailant was expecting maybe only the 2 employees. And then, of course, they were surprised when they found the other 2 girls there in the shop. They think the assailant overpowered the girls, forced them into the back of the shop, away from the exposed windows, and then restrained them with their own clothes. Again, this is only speculation based on what we're seeing. Per usual, any homicide case, police question family, neighbors, co-workers, friends, teachers. They're even able to speak to those last customers, Tim and Margaret. Tim and Margaret are able to recall seeing 2 large people in hooded jackets sitting at a booth together. They mentioned that the 2 looked kind of awkward. They didn't have any food at their table. They weren't really talking. It was just kind of an overall odd situation. Margaret admitted that she had a bad feeling, like there was something wrong, even though everything appeared normal. She even recalled that she heard Eliza and Jennifer talking about their upcoming schedules and stuff. But it also seemed like those 2 hooded individuals were listening to their conversation and being very observant. And we don't actually hear anything else about these 2 hooded individuals. It seems to be kind of the only lead during this process, but again, I've not been able to find any other details on them. Sometime after the investigators had time to look over the scene, the yogurt shop manager, Reese Price, she was called and asked to come and look over the scene, see if she noticed anything that might be helpful. She was able to determine what stage of closing the girls were at when they were interrupted by the intruder or intruders. She could tell that Jennifer had just started cleaning the first yogurt machine, and Eliza was wiping down the surfaces. The register was open, the cash drawer removed, the sales slips had been printed. It looked like maybe the girls were 10 to 15 minutes into the closing procedure. So you take this into account, and you take in that phone call to the police department that happened at 11:47. Based on this, the entire crime of, forcing the girls to the back room, making them take off their clothes, restraining them, shooting them, starting the fire, all of this had to have happened in about a 30-minute span. A few days after the murders, police discover potential suspect Maurice Pierce, a 16-year-old kid that was found at the mall with a loaded handgun. And yes, it was the same local mall that the girls had just been to. The gun that was loaded, mind you, matched the same make and model of the one that was used in the murders. So along with Maurice, the police also suspect his 3 friends, kind of like a 4-person group. Those friends were Forrest Welborn, Robert Springsteen, and Michael Scott. So all 4 of these guys were on the police's radar. Multiple departments and agencies get involved. In January the following year, which is only about a month later, the ICBY task force was formed. I can't believe it's yogurt. So they took the name and they just created this task force. And this included multiple agencies like the FBI, the police, fire department, plus the Department of Public Safety. One thing I find fascinating in cases that we don't always get to see is the profiling of the suspect. This task force came up with what kind of suspect they felt like they were dealing with. Now, this takes some major psychological studies, some know-how. And here are some notes from that report. Although other races can't be eliminated, the probability of the suspect being white is high. Maybe late teens to mid-20s, an alcohol and or drug user, most likely someone that didn't complete high school, someone that has discipline problems. The offender resents any form of discipline or authority. They are an impulsive person. They're quick to anger, and they most likely frequent the yogurt shop and are very familiar with the area. Let me add here that the team felt like they were dealing with at least 2 offenders. This is based on the severity of the crime, the short time span, remember 30 minutes, plus the number of victims, 4. All of this kind of indicates that it couldn't have been just one person. Couple crazy notes about this case. There were actually a lot of false confessions, and that blows my mind. But some reports say there could have been as many as 50 false confessions. There were also a lot of leads, but like those false confessions, they really served no purpose. They were all dead ends. Okay, so let's fast forward to September 8th, 1999. And pay attention because we're going to be moving pretty quickly through this timeline. So September 8th, 1999, Michael Scott, one of those names I mentioned earlier, he is interrogated for more than 18 hours. Police say his confession explains everything, that the boys were trying to rob the yogurt shop, and it escalated from there. Michael blames Robert, while Robert later on blames Michael. And after Michael's written statement, the police arrest those 4 guys, and this happens on October 6th, 1999. Again, this was Michael Scott, Robert Springsteen, Maurice Pierce, and Forrest Wilburn. Forrest would later be released because there wasn't enough evidence linking him to the crime. So by December, we not only have Michael's written statement, but we also now have a 5-hour videotaped interview from Robert. And apparently this is enough for the judge to say probable cause. And on December 28th, Robert, Michael, and Maurice are indicted on capital murder charges. Moving on to May 2nd of 2000, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms releases a report stating the gun found on Maurice was in fact not the murder weapon. On the 16th of this same month, we learned that an APD ballistics expert already told the detectives back in January of 99 that the gun was most likely not the right weapon. And continuing with this horrible show, June 30th, a Texas Department of Public Safety report shows there is no DNA from any of the arrested suspects at the crime scene. Finally, from what I read, a judge throws out all those charges against Maurice, Michael, Robert, and Forrest. But in May of 2001, for some reason I cannot explain, the trials still happen. Because I read that a jury convicts Robert Springsteen of murder, sends him to death row. September 2002, Michael is also convicted. He is sentenced to life in prison. Again, moving quickly. We move into January 2003. The district attorney says there isn't enough evidence to keep Maurice or put him through a trial. So those charges are dropped. He is set free. Remember, he was the original one that had the gun at the mall. He's set free. So June 2005. The U.S. Supreme Court rules that convicted killers aged 17 and under cannot be executed. This ruling saves Robert from his death sentence. So instead, he's given life in prison. They changed the sentencing. May 2006. So nearly 15 years since the quadruple homicide. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals overturns Robert's conviction, stating he never got to confront his accuser in court. Those were the words that in the report. This same thing would also happen for Michael sometime in June of 2007. So now we are in February 2007. Robert's appeal is denied, and he is sent to a new trial. April 17th, 2008. Another DNA sample is tested and cannot be linked to Robert or Michael. May 2nd. Maurice is arrested on charges of resisting arrest and assault on a police officer. May 28th, Michael gets the chance to speak in court for his pre-trial hearing. September 17th, another pre-trial hearing, this time with both Michael and Robert present. Defense requests more DNA testing of physical evidence from the crime scene. The judge agrees, but with the stipulation that they narrow down the list of items that will be tested. So December, we're still in 2008, the new DNA testing still proves there's no connection to Michael or Robert, or obviously Maurice or Forrest. Defense says the only evidence in this case are those coerced confessions. The only evidence. An important note, the DNA analysis does prove that there's an unknown male party at the scene. So obviously it's male DNA, and that person's DNA is found on 3 of the 4 victims. And again, this does not tie to any of our 4 arrested suspects. Okay, now it's June 24th, 2009. Robert and Michael are released from prison on bond with plans to appear for a later trial. December 23rd, 2010. I hate this one. There's an altercation with the police, and Maurice Pierce is shot and killed during this altercation. I've not found any other details other than that. In 2013, Robert files lawsuits in state and federal courts for being wrongfully imprisoned, but these are dismissed. In January 2017, a new team is formed to further investigate the yogurt shop murders. We've now passed the 17th anniversary of that horrible day. At this point, our technology has made groundbreaking improvements, including in the DNA realm, where evidence could be matched to relatives of suspects. Remember, this is when the same time that the ancestry and stuff started happening. So people's DNAs, they were being sent and put in files and computers, and so there was the possibility of people being linked based on DNA matching. So this same year, 2017, they're retesting or first time testing this DNA from the crime scene. They find a match. Unfortunately, public information is very limited. Records are sealed, so we don't know any details on this other than they found a match. In August of 2025, a docu-series titled The Yogurt Shop Murders is released on HBO Max. I have watched most of this. In this series, we get to see the victims' families. We see those that were wrongfully accused. We see the community impacted. We even see those that were in the media industry and how they were impacted. Ghouls, it is so heartbreaking to watch these kind of shows. I mean, it's as real as it can be. And I highly recommend it. I mean, this goes along with why I do what I do. These stories need to be heard. These victims' names need to be known. But please keep your guard up of your emotions while watching this. September 26th, 2025. The Austin Police Department announced a significant breakthrough in the case. We can finally learn what that DNA testing gave us. The sample identified Robert Eugene Brashers as our suspect. And remember, his DNA was on 3 of those 4 victims. Now, you may be asking, who is Robert Eugene Brashers? Honestly, I didn't even recognize the name. And I'm an obsessed true crime person. But this person, he is an American serial killer and a rapist. He is linked to murders across Kentucky, Missouri, South Carolina, and Texas. Sadly, Robert committed suicide in Missouri in 1999 with the same kind of gun that he used in the yogurt shop murders. He'll never see that day in court. That family will never get that real closure. I needed to say that. Even though we now know who the perpetrator was, it's not until February 19th, 2026, so this year, 3 months ago, that those 4 original suspects, Maurice, Forrest, Michael, and Robert, they're finally fully exonerated. Which honestly is absolutely insane considering the lack of evidence that was against them, which there was none. So now for the interesting facts of the case. In June 2025, Detective Jackson was on this case and discovered a .380 cartridge from the yogurt shop matched an unsolved murder in Kentucky from the year 1998. The same detective helped with the DNA analysis that linked Robert to the case. Also, Detective Jackson, he learned that less than 48 hours after committing the quadruple homicide in Austin, he was stopped by Border Patrol between Texas and New Mexico. He was actually driving a stolen car carrying a .380 pistol. And ghouls, this pistol was the same one used in the homicide. So it was Amy, the youngest victim, 13-year-old Amy, that actually helped link the case to the monster that did it. His DNA was under her fingernails. She fought back. Occasionally, I will try to find a statement or a quote or something that from someone that's involved within the case. And I found something from the Austin mayor. His name is Kirk Watson. And I liked what he says. My hopefulness is that we can turn a page as a community. And hopefully the final page on this horror that marked a very different time in Austin's history. This case reminds me of the West Memphis 3, how there were more victims than just those that were brutally murdered. The wrongfully accused also end up being victims. And if you're not familiar with this case, I did an episode on the West Memphis 3 back in April, so not that long ago. You're welcome to go back and listen to it. It's a really good case. One positive thing that does come from this horrible case, the community really came together during this time. There were so many fundraisers and benefits. People made banners and pins. They strived to keep the memory of those 4 girls alive. And that is amazing to me. So things to remember before we wrap up this case. This case happened to a town that was already growing from a small town to a metropolis. A senseless act ended those 4 lives way too early. This was the time when cell phones weren't seen in every hand. People weren't glued to electronics. There weren't all these distractions that we have now. This case, this quadruple homicide, absolutely rocked the town in the most awful way and changed so many lives. Even 30 years later. Remember those names. Share their stories. Just in case, let me say those names again. Eliza Thomas, Amy Ayers, Jennifer and Sarah Harbison. Remember those 4 names. If you have any details worth sharing, maybe you have your own theory, please reach out. Always reach out if you know something. You can connect with us on Instagram and WordPress. Just search for the Shrouded in Darkness podcast. And as always, thank you for tuning in. If there's a case from your hometown that deserves attention, send it to us. We can cover it in a future episode. Tune in next week as we dive into the case surrounding Morgan Nick. Until next time, ghouls, remember, the truth is always hiding in the darkness.